The stars above the Galactic Council world were bright and calm. From far away, the planet looked peaceful. But inside the Great Council Hall, tension filled the air. The council chamber was enormous. It floated high above the planet like a silver ring. Inside, hundreds of alien species had gathered. Tall beings with long arms. Small creatures with shining eyes. Some looked like living crystals and others looked like walking shadows. Every powerful civilization in the galaxy had sent a representative. The meeting was urgent. And the reason for this meeting was a young species called humans. For many years, humans had lived quietly on the edge of the galaxy. Their planet Earth was far from the center of galactic power. They traded simple technology. They shared food and medicine. They helped weaker civilizations. Humans never started wars. Because of this, most species believed humans were peaceful. Maybe even weak. But not everyone believed that. At the center of the chamber stood a tall, armored figure. His dark red armor reflected the light of the stars outside the glass walls. He was Commander Vrax, leader of the powerful Varkon Dominion fleet. The Varkon Empire had grown very fast in recent decades. Their ships were strong. Their soldiers were fearless. Their leaders believed they were the future rulers of the galaxy. Commander Vrax looked around the council chamber with confidence. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," he began, his deep voice echoing through the hall. "We have gathered here because the Varkon Dominion has made an important decision." Some species leaned forward in their seats. Others whispered quietly. Vrax continued. "The Dominion has decided to expand its territory. And the next system we will claim is the Soul System." The room instantly filled with murmurs. Everyone knew what the Soul System was. It was the home of humanity. A tall blue-skinned diplomat slowly stood from his seat. "Commander Vrax," he said carefully, "Earth is a protected world. Humanity is a peaceful species. There is no reason for conflict." Vrax smiled slightly. "Peaceful," he said. "Or weak?" Some members of the council shifted nervously. For many years, humans had avoided major conflicts. They preferred diplomacy. They preferred trade. They helped rebuild damaged worlds. But the Varkon Dominion saw that behavior as weakness. "We have studied human history," Vrax continued proudly. "They fight among themselves constantly. Their technology is average. Their fleets are small. They are not ready to defend their system." More whispers filled the chamber. But suddenly, a quiet voice spoke from the far side of the hall. "Commander Vrax." The entire chamber slowly became silent. Everyone turned toward the speaker. At the highest level of the council chamber sat a group known simply as the Elders. No one knew exactly how old they were. Some said they had watched stars form. Others believed they had witnessed the first civilizations of the galaxy. They rarely spoke. But when they did, everyone listened. One of the Elders slowly stood. His body was thin and tall, wrapped in simple dark robes. His long silver eyes looked calm and ancient. The Elder stepped forward slightly. "Commander Vrax," he repeated softly, "the decision you are making is dangerous." Vrax crossed his arms. "Dangerous," he said with a small laugh. "You believe humans can stop us?" The Elder did not smile. "We are not worried about your victory," he replied. "We are worried about what happens after." A strange silence filled the chamber. Vrax frowned slightly. "I do not understand." The Elder looked directly at him. "Humanity is a strange species," he said slowly. "They appear peaceful. They appear patient. But they are also unpredictable." Some council members nodded quietly. The Elder continued speaking. "Long ago we observed humans when they first entered space. At that time they were aggressive and divided. They fought many wars with each other." Vrax raised an eyebrow. "That does not sound impressive." The Elder continued calmly. "But over time something changed. Humans learned from their mistakes. They began to cooperate. They built alliances. They started helping weaker species instead of conquering them. Another elder spoke from behind him. They chose peace, she said quietly. Commander Vrax shook his head. Then they are weak. The first elder slowly shook his head. No. He paused. They are restrained. Those words made several council members uncomfortable. Vrax looked confused. What does that mean? The elder's silver eyes seemed to shine brighter. It means, he said slowly, they choose not to show their full strength. The chamber became completely silent again. Commander Vrax laughed loudly. Full strength, he said. You speak as if humans are hiding something. The elder did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked across the chamber at the hundreds of watching civilizations. Then he spoke again. There are many stories about humans, he said quietly. Most of them are rumors. Most are impossible to confirm. Now the entire council was listening carefully. What stories? Someone asked. The elder folded his hands behind his back. Stories of ships that appear suddenly from empty space. Stories of planets protected by defenses no weapon can break. Stories of human fleets that vanish after battles, leaving nothing behind but silence. A small green diplomat spoke nervously. Those are only myths. The elder nodded slightly. Yes, he said. Perhaps. Commander Vrax looked impatient. So we should cancel our expansion because of stories? The elder looked directly at him again. No, he said calmly. You should cancel it because of history. The room became tense. The elder continued. There have been 3 known attacks against human colonies in the past 200 years. Some council members looked surprised. Most civilizations did not know this. Each attack ended quickly, the elder explained. How quickly? Vrax asked. The elder's answer was simple. Very quickly. A low whisper moved through the chamber. Commander Vrax stepped forward. You are trying to scare us, he said. No, the elder replied softly. We are trying to warn you. Vrax looked around the chamber. Most council members looked uneasy now. But the Varkon commander only felt pride. The Varkon Dominion does not fear humans, he declared loudly. Our fleet is the strongest in this region of the galaxy. He raised his arm confidently. In 3 days, our war fleet will arrive in the Sol system. Gasps filled the chamber. You cannot do this, someone shouted. Earth is not a military world. The council must vote on this. But Vrax only smiled. The decision is already made. He turned toward the elders. You say we should not provoke humans, he said. Yes, the elder replied. Then watch carefully, Vrax said proudly. Because in a few days, the galaxy will see how weak they truly are. The elder slowly closed his eyes. For a moment he looked very tired. When he opened them again, his voice was quiet. You are making a mistake. Vrax did not respond. Instead, he turned and walked out of the council chamber. His armored footsteps echoed across the silent hall. After he left, the chamber remained quiet for a long time. Finally, a small representative spoke. What will happen now? One of the elders looked toward the giant window that showed the stars. Far away beyond those stars, a blue planet moved peacefully around its sun. Now, the elder said quietly, we wait. Another council member looked nervous. Do you truly believe humans are dangerous? The elder answered slowly. I believe humans are patient. He paused again. And patience is often mistaken for weakness. Days passed quickly across the galaxy. Deep in space, the Varkon fleet moved forward. Thousands of warships traveled together like a dark metal storm. Huge carriers, fast destroyers, heavy battle cruisers. Millions of soldiers prepared for invasion. Commander Vrax stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the stars pass outside the window. Soon they would reach the Sol system. Soon they would show the galaxy the truth about humanity. But far away, on a quiet blue world called Earth, something unexpected happened. A signal arrived. Came from deep space. Hidden satellites detected the approaching Varkon fleet. The message moved quickly through human networks. Within minutes, the leaders of Earth received the warning. Inside a secret command center beneath the ocean, several human officers stood in silence as the report appeared on their screens. One officer spoke slowly. "So, it finally happened." Another officer nodded. "Yes." For a moment, the room was completely quiet. Then the commander gave a simple order. "Wake them." Deep beneath the dark oceans of Earth, far below the waves where sunlight could never reach, massive structures slowly began to move. Ancient systems powered on. Lights appeared in the darkness. Engines that had slept for decades began to hum again. And somewhere in that hidden place, something enormous slowly opened its eyes. Because the galaxy was about to learn something important. Humans did not avoid war because they were weak. They avoided war because they knew exactly what would happen when they finally decided to fight. Far from the center of the galaxy, the Sol system looked peaceful. The yellow star shined calmly. The planets moved quietly in their ancient paths. To most observers, nothing looked unusual. But deep inside space, something had already changed. The Varkon Dominion fleet moved closer every hour. Thousands of dark warships traveled together like a metal storm. Their engines burned bright blue lines through the darkness. The fleet was massive, bigger than any armada the Varkon Empire had ever sent before. At the front of the fleet was the flagship Iron Judgment. Inside the bridge, Commander Vrax stood proudly near the viewing window. His sharp eyes watched the distant star of the Sol system grow slowly larger. "Time to arrival," he asked. A Varkon officer looked at the glowing navigation screen. 22 hours, Commander." Vrax nodded. Soon the humans would see the power of the Dominion. The bridge officers were calm. Many of them believed this mission would be simple. Their scanners showed only a few small human patrol ships near the outer planets. Nothing that could stop them. "Human defenses are weak," another officer said confidently. "Their fleet size is small. Our fleet is nearly 10 times larger." Vrax smiled slightly. "Exactly as we expected." But then the navigation officer frowned. "Commander, something strange is happening." Vrax turned. "What is it?" "Our scanners are receiving unusual signals from inside the Sol system." "What kind of signals?" The officer hesitated. "Old signals." The bridge grew quiet. "Old?" Vrax asked. "Yes, a very old. Some of them are more than 100 years old." That made no sense. Signals that old should not still be active. "Locate the source," Vrax ordered. The officer tapped several commands on the control panel. A star map appeared above the bridge floor. Red lights began to appear on the map. At first there were only a few, then more, then dozens. Soon the map was filled with hundreds of blinking signals. But something was strange. None of them were near the planets. They were all coming from Earth itself. Vrax narrowed his eyes. "Human cities." "No, Commander," the officer said quietly. "The signals are coming from below the surface." Vrax stared at the map. "Underground bases." The officer shook his head slowly. "No." A new scan finished. The officer's voice became tense. "Commander, the signals are coming from under the oceans." The bridge became silent. Earth was covered with large oceans. Most of the planet was water. But no advanced civilization built massive military structures under oceans. It was not practical. "Run deeper scans," Vrax ordered. "Yes, Commander." The scanners pushed harder. Powerful detection waves moved through space toward Earth. They passed through the clouds, through the atmosphere, through the deep oceans. And then the results appeared. The officer's eyes widened. "That cannot be correct." "What is it?" Vrax demanded. The officer slowly turned the screen toward the commander. Vrax looked at the data. For a moment he said nothing. The scan showed enormous structures resting on the ocean floor. They were not small bases. They were not stations. They were ships, huge ships. Ships so large that some of them were bigger than mountains. And there were hundreds of them. Ancient human warships, hidden deep under Earth's oceans. The silence on the bridge grew heavy. How long have they been there? Vrax asked slowly. The officer looked at the scan again. Some of these structures appear to be more than 80 years old. Another officer whispered quietly. They were hiding them. Why hide ships for 80 years? Someone asked. Vrax stared at the screen. That question had only one possible answer. Preparation. The humans had been preparing for something. For a very long time. Suddenly another alert appeared. Commander! The sensor officer shouted. What now? The structures are moving. The star map updated again. Large signals were rising slowly from the ocean floor. Deep inside Earth's dark waters, massive engines began to wake. For decades they had slept. Now they were alive again. On the bridge of the Iron Judgment, tension filled the air. Visual confirmation. Vrax asked. A screen opened in the center of the bridge. It showed a satellite view of Earth's ocean. At first the water looked normal. But then something changed. The ocean surface began to move. Large waves formed across hundreds of kilometers. Then the water slowly separated. Something enormous was rising. A giant metal shape pushed upward through the dark water. Steam and white clouds exploded into the air as the massive object broke the surface. It was a ship. Gigantic ship. Its hull was dark gray, covered with powerful weapon towers and glowing blue energy lines. But that was only the first one. Another ship rose nearby. Then another. And another. All across Earth's oceans, the same event was happening. Huge warships slowly emerged from the deep water. Carriers, battle cruisers, heavy destroyers, ships that had been hidden from the galaxy for decades. Back on the Varkon flagship, no one spoke. Even Commander Vrax felt something strange in his chest. This was not what he expected. Count them, he said quietly. The officer ran the numbers quickly. Then he looked up. Commander. Current count is 312 ships. That number shocked the entire bridge. 300 warships, all hidden under one planet. And more signals were still rising. Another officer spoke nervously. Commander. Their size is enormous. Some ships are nearly 5 kilometers long. That was larger than most Varkon battleships. Vrax crossed his arms. So humans prepared a fleet, he said. That changes nothing. But even as he spoke those words, he knew the situation had changed. The humans had not been weak. They had simply been quiet. On Earth, deep under the ocean, a secret command center was alive with activity. Human officers watched large screens showing the Varkon fleet approaching the outer system. Admiral Elias Carter stood at the center of the room. He was calm, very calm. An officer approached him. Admiral, ocean fleets are now active. Status: 360 ships fully operational. Carter nodded slowly. Good. Another officer spoke. The Varkon fleet will reach the outer defense line in 9 hours. Carter looked at the star map. Thousands of enemy ships were moving toward Earth. But he did not look worried. Instead he asked a different question. Did we send the message? Yes, Admiral. Across the galaxy, on the Galactic Council world, the Elders received the signal. Simple message. Only 4 words. Human defense protocol active. The Elder who had warned the Council closed his eyes slowly. It has begun, he said. Several Council members looked frightened. Can humans win? Someone asked. The Elder answered calmly. That is not the real question. The Council member looked confused. Then what is? The Elder looked toward the distant stars. The real question is, how much of the Varkon fleet will survive? Back near the Sol system, the Varkon fleet continued moving forward. Commander Vrax stood silently on the bridge. He watched the human ships gathering around Earth. Hundreds of warships now surrounded the blue planet like silent guardians. For the first time since the mission began, the Varkon commander felt something unusual. But he pushed the feeling away. "Our fleet is still larger," he said firmly. "Yes, Commander," the officers replied. But the truth was simple. No one expected humans to have a hidden fleet. No one expected them to be ready. And far below Earth's oceans, the final warship began to rise. It was different from the others. Much larger. Much darker. Ancient systems slowly powered on. Old engines started to glow with deep blue energy. Human engineers watched the activation screens carefully. One of them whispered quietly, "The Titan is awake." Above Earth, hundreds of human warships turned slowly toward deep space, toward the approaching Varkon fleet. And for the first time since entering the Sol system, the Varkon scanners detected something new. Human weapons powering up. The battle had not started yet. But the galaxy was about to witness something it would never forget. Because the Elders were right. Humans were not weak. They were simply patient. And patience can hide power for a very long time. The Sol system was no longer quiet. Hundreds of human warships now surrounded Earth like a steel shield. Their dark hulls reflected the light of the sun. Blue energy lines moved slowly across their surfaces as ancient systems woke fully from their long sleep. For many years, the galaxy believed humanity had only a small defense fleet. Now the truth was slowly rising from the oceans. 300, then 350. Then almost 400 human warships. All hidden for decades. All ready for war. And far away, the Varkon Dominion fleet continued moving closer. On the bridge of the flagship Iron Judgment, Commander Vrax stood in silence. A giant tactical screen floated in the center of the room. Red lights showed the position of the Varkon fleet. Blue lights now marked the human ships around Earth. The difference was clear. The Varkon fleet was still larger. But something about the human ships made the Varkon officers uneasy. They were too organized. "Commander," a sensor officer said carefully, "human ships are moving into formation." Vrax looked at the screen. The blue lights were spreading out across the space near Earth. But they were not moving randomly. Every ship was taking a perfect position. Perfect distances. Perfect angles. It looked like a massive wall forming in space. "Defense line." "They are preparing for battle," an officer said. Vrax nodded. "Of course they are." But then another signal appeared. "Commander, there is another ship." Vrax frowned. "What do you mean?" The officer zoomed in on a new signal. First it looked like a small moon. But the scan data quickly changed. The object was not natural. It was a ship. A single enormous ship slowly moving away from Earth. The size numbers appeared on the screen. The officer stared in disbelief. "Commander, length estimate. 12 kilometers. The bridge went completely silent. 12 kilometers. That was larger than anything the Varkon Dominion had ever built. Even their largest carriers were only 4 kilometers long. "What class of ship is that?" an officer whispered. No one knew. The strange ship moved slowly forward, placing itself in front of the human fleet. Its surface was darker than the others. Thick armor covered its massive body. Huge weapon towers were placed across its hull. And in the center of the ship, a giant circular structure began to glow with deep blue energy. Back on Earth, inside the Ocean Command Center, Admiral Elias Carter watched the same image. "The Titan is in position," an officer reported. Carter nodded slowly. The Titan-class warship had never been seen by the galaxy before. It was the largest human ship ever created. It had been built slowly, secretly, over many decades. Not because humans wanted war, but because humans believed one simple rule. Peace must be protected. Another officer looked nervous. "Admiral, the Varkon fleet is still larger." Carter looked at the tactical map. Thousands of enemy ships were entering the outer Sol system. "Yes," he said calmly. "But numbers are not everything. Back on the Varkon flagship, Commander Vrax was studying the massive human ship. "Scan its weapons," he ordered. The sensor officer ran a deep scan. Moments later the results appeared. Then the officer slowly looked up. "Commander, the readings are unusual." "How unusual?" "The energy output from that ship is higher than an entire Varkon battle group." "That was impossible. One ship should not produce that much power." "Are you certain?" Vrax asked. "Yes, Commander." The bridge crew exchanged worried looks. But Vrax refused to show doubt. "Prepare the fleet for attack formation," he ordered. "Yes, Commander." Across space, thousands of Varkon warships began to spread out. Weapons powered up. Missile bays opened. Energy cannons began to glow. The invasion had begun. Inside the Galactic Council chamber, many civilizations were now watching the battle through live transmissions. The elders sat quietly at the highest seats. The same elder who had warned Commander Vrax watched the battle with calm eyes. A nervous council member spoke. "The Varkon fleet is enormous." Another one whispered. "Humans cannot stop that many ships." The elder finally spoke. "Watch carefully." Back in the Sol system, the distance between the two fleets slowly decreased. Millions of kilometers became thousands. Thousands became hundreds. Finally, the Varkon fleet reached firing range. Commander Vrax raised his hand. "All ships, prepare to fire." Thousands of weapon systems locked onto human targets. Energy cannons glowed bright red. Missile systems waited for the final command. "Fire!" The order moved instantly through the entire Varkon fleet. And then space exploded with light. Thousands of missiles rushed forward. Energy beams crossed the darkness like burning lines. The first attack wave was massive. On Earth, the human command center watched calmly. "Enemy weapons incoming," an officer said. Admiral Carter spoke one simple order. "Activate the shield." Above Earth, the human fleet did not move. The Titan-class ship remained perfectly still. Then something appeared. A giant invisible barrier suddenly formed around the human fleet. The first Varkon missiles slammed into the shield. Bright explosions filled space. Energy beams struck the barrier. The shield glowed brightly for a moment. But it did not break. The attacks continued for several seconds. Thousands of weapons hit the defense. But when the light faded, the human fleet was still there, completely untouched. Back on the Varkon flagship, confusion spread across the bridge. The shield absorbed everything. That level of defense is impossible. Commander Vrax stared at the screen. His fleet had just launched one of the largest attack waves in Varkon history, and it had done nothing. Then something else happened. The giant weapon structure on the Titan-class ship began to glow brighter. Energy gathered slowly inside the massive ring. Human officers watched quietly. "Main weapon charged," someone said. Admiral Carter gave a calm nod. "Fire!" In space, a single blue beam shot forward from the Titan. It moved silently, almost slowly, but its power was terrifying. The beam crossed the distance between the fleets in seconds. And then it touched the first line of Varkon ships. For a moment nothing happened. Then half of the ships simply disappeared. Not exploded. Not broken. They were simply gone. Erased from space. The beam continued moving. More ships vanished. Entire groups of destroyers and cruisers disappeared as if they had never existed. On the Varkon flagship, alarms screamed across the bridge. Multiple ships lost. Entire formations gone. What weapon is that? Commander Vrax stared in shock. In less than 5 seconds, nearly 1/3 of the Varkon fleet was gone. Completely destroyed. No debris. No survivors. Only empty space remained. Across the galaxy, the council chamber filled with terrified whispers. The elder closed his eyes for a moment. Then he spoke quietly. "This is why we warned them." Back in the Sol system, the Titan's weapons slowly powered down. The human fleet still had not moved. But the battle had already changed. For the first time since the invasion began, the Varkon Dominion fleet stopped advancing. Fear was spreading across their ships, because they had finally realized something. The humans had not been hiding out of fear. They had been hiding their power. And now the galaxy was finally seeing the truth. Humanity had prepared for war for a very long time. And when humans finally decided to fight, the battle could end faster than anyone expected. Space near the Sol system was filled with silence again. Only a few minutes earlier, thousands of weapons had burned across the darkness. Missiles, beams, and explosions had filled the void. Now everything looked different. Where the front line of the Varkon Dominion fleet once existed, there was only empty space. Hundreds of Varkon warships were simply gone. Not broken. Not damaged. On the bridge of the flagship Iron Judgment, alarm lights flashed across every control panel. Damage report. Commander Vrax demanded. Officers rushed to check the systems. Commander, we have lost 340 ships. Another officer added quickly. Multiple battle groups destroyed instantly. The bridge crew looked shocked. No one had ever seen a weapon like the one used by the human Titan-class warship. Commander Vrax stared at the tactical map. Red lights that represented his ships were disappearing one after another. But his fleet was still large. Very large. More than 2,000 warships remained. He refused to believe that humans could defeat them. Reform the fleet, Vrax ordered sharply. Yes, Commander. Across space, the surviving Varkon ships moved quickly. They changed their positions and created a new attack formation. Heavy carriers moved to the center. Destroyers spread along the sides. Long-range artillery ships moved behind them. Vrax clenched his fist. We will overwhelm them with numbers, he said. The officers nodded nervously. Back near Earth, the human fleet remained calm. Hundreds of ships stayed perfectly organized around the planet. The Titan-class warship still stood in the front like a silent guardian. Inside the human command center under the ocean, Admiral Elias Carter watched the battle map. One officer spoke. Enemy fleet is reorganizing. Another officer added. They are preparing a second attack wave. Carter nodded. They will try to surround us. The officers looked at him. Should we move the fleet? Carter shook his head. No. His answer surprised some of the younger officers. We will move forward. The room became quiet. Forward? Someone asked. Yes, Carter replied calmly. Humans do not wait forever. A moment later, a new command spread across the human fleet. All ships advance. Across space, hundreds of human warships began moving slowly toward the Varkon fleet. First the movement was small, but then the speed increased. Blue engines burned brightly behind each ship. The Titan-class warship moved first. The giant vessel pushed forward like a mountain drifting through space. Behind it, the rest of the fleet followed in perfect formation. Back on the Varkon flagship, the sensor officer suddenly spoke. Commander, the human fleet is moving. Vrax looked up quickly. Toward us. Yes, Commander. That was unexpected. Most defensive fleets stayed near their planet. But the humans were doing the opposite. They were moving away from Earth. Moving closer to the Varkon fleet. Almost like they were inviting the enemy to fight. Vrax smiled coldly. Good, he said. If they come closer, we can destroy them faster. He raised his hand again. All ships prepare second strike. Thousands of weapons locked onto the approaching human ships. Missile launchers opened. Energy cannons glowed bright red again. The distance between the two fleets became smaller. Then Vrax shouted the command. Fire! The second Varkon attack wave exploded across space. Missiles rushed forward like a metal storm. Thousands of energy beams crossed the darkness again. But this time something was different. The human fleet did not stay still. Human ships began moving smoothly through space. They turned, shifted, and accelerated with perfect timing. Many missiles missed their targets completely. Energy beams passed through empty space. Some attacks struck the invisible shield again. But most weapons failed to hit anything important. Human ships moved like dancers in zero gravity. Precise, fast, perfectly coordinated. On the Varkon flagship, confusion grew. How are they predicting our attacks? Their movements are too accurate. Commander Vrax watched the screen carefully. Then he understood. They are using advanced combat algorithms, he said quietly. Human ships were not only powerful, they were also incredibly smart. Artificial intelligence systems were helping the fleet move as one single unit. And then the humans began their counterattack. One by one, human battleships fired their main weapons. Blue beams shot across space. Railgun projectiles moved faster than sensors could track. Explosions appeared across the Varkon fleet. A destroyer split in half. A cruiser vanished in a flash of energy. Missile carriers exploded before they could reload. The battlefield quickly turned into chaos. Commander, we are losing ships rapidly. How many? Vrax asked. More than 200 destroyed in the last 2 minutes. Even the powerful Varkon fleet could not stop the damage. Human weapons were too accurate, too powerful, too advanced. But the Titan-class warship had not fired again yet. Simply moved slowly forward, watching, waiting. Then suddenly its giant weapon ring began glowing again. On the human command center screen, the energy levels rose. Titan main weapon charging, an officer reported. Admiral Carter looked at the timer. Hold the charge. Yes, Admiral. Back on the Varkon flagship, fear slowly began to spread. Many officers had now seen the recordings of the first Titan attack. They knew what could happen if that weapon fired again. Commander, one officer whispered. Should we retreat? Vrax turned sharply. Retreat. He looked around the bridge. We still outnumber them. But even as he spoke those words, another explosion appeared on the screen. Another group of Varkon ships disappeared. The battle was no longer balanced. The humans were winning. Slowly, but clearly. Back on the Galactic Council world, the chamber was silent. Every species watched the battle through the live transmission. Some civilizations looked shocked. Others looked frightened. A small representative whispered, "This war is already over." One of the elders nodded slowly. Yes, but the Varkon commander has not realized it yet. Back in the Sol system, the Titan weapon finished charging. Main weapon ready, the officer reported. Admiral Carter finally gave the order. Fire! Once again the massive blue beam shot across space. But this time it did not stop. The beam moved slowly across the Varkon fleet like a giant blade of light. Ships disappeared wherever it touched. Cruisers, destroyers, carriers. Entire battle groups vanished. The Varkon fleet broke into panic. Ships tried to escape in different directions. Some attempted emergency jumps. Others fired wildly in every direction. But it was too late. The human fleet continued advancing. Human ships surrounded the remaining enemy forces. Railguns fired again. Missiles struck fleeing targets. More Varkon ships exploded across the battlefield. On the flagship bridge, Commander Vrax finally understood the truth. The war was lost. His fleet was being destroyed faster than he could give orders. The Titan beam stopped firing. But the damage was already done. More than half of the Varkon fleet was gone. The remaining ships were scattered and damaged. Commander, an officer said quietly, we cannot win this battle. Vrax stared at the burning battlefield. For the first time since the invasion began, he felt real fear. He remembered the words of the elder in the council chamber. Do not provoke humanity. But it was too late now. Because the humans had finally decided to fight. And when humans fought, they finished the war. The battle had lasted less than 1 hour. But for the Varkon Dominion, It had already become a disaster that the galaxy would remember forever. The battle in the Sol system was almost over. Only small groups of Varkon ships were still moving through space. Most of the great invasion fleet had already been destroyed. Broken metal, fading energy clouds, and silent debris floated between the planets. Human ships moved slowly across the battlefield. Not hunting, not celebrating. They were simply watching, making sure the war was truly finished. On the bridge of the damaged Varkon flagship Iron Judgment, the situation was terrible. Smoke filled the command room. Several control panels were dark. Emergency lights flashed red across the walls. Commander Vrax stood in silence near the broken viewing window. Outside, he could see human ships surrounding the remaining Varkon forces. Only a few hundred ships from the once great fleet were still alive, and even those ships were badly damaged. An officer spoke weakly from the control station. "Commander, most of our communication systems are gone." Another officer added, "Hyperjump engines on many ships are destroyed." Vrax did not answer immediately. He continued looking at the human fleet outside. The Titan-class warship floated in the center of the battlefield like a giant dark star. It was quiet now. Its powerful weapon was no longer glowing. But its presence alone was enough to silence an army. Vrax finally spoke. "How many ships remain?" The officer checked the data again. 217 operational vessels. Vrax slowly closed his eyes. They had arrived with more than 3,000 warships. Now only a small fraction remained. Another officer turned toward him carefully. "Commander, the fleet is asking for orders." The room became very quiet. Everyone knew what the question really meant. Should they continue fighting? Or should they surrender? Vrax clenched his hands. The Varkon Dominion was proud. They were conquerors. They were warriors. Surrender was something they had never done. But the truth in front of him was impossible to ignore. The human fleet had barely lost any ships. Their defenses were still strong. Their formations were perfect. And the Titan warship had not even used its full power yet. Continuing the fight would only destroy the remaining fleet. Slowly Vrax spoke again. "Send a signal to the human fleet." The officer looked surprised. "A signal, Commander?" "Yes." The officer nodded and prepared the transmission. "What message should we send?" For several seconds Vrax said nothing. Then he spoke quietly. "Request ceasefire." The officer hesitated for a moment. But then he sent the message. The signal traveled quickly through space. It reached the human fleet in seconds. Inside the Ocean Command Center on Earth, Admiral Elias Carter watched the new message appear on the main screen. One officer read it aloud. "Enemy flagship requesting ceasefire." Another officer asked, "Should we ignore it?" Carter shook his head. "No." He studied the battlefield map. Most enemy ships were already disabled. The war was finished. Destroying the rest would not change anything. "Open communication channel," Carter ordered. Moments later, the face of Commander Vrax appeared on the screen. The Varkon commander looked tired. His armor was damaged. Smoke moved slowly behind him on the bridge. For a moment neither leader spoke. Finally Vrax broke the silence. "You have won," he said slowly. Carter looked calm. "This battle was never necessary." Vrax gave a small bitter smile. "The elders warned us." "Yes," Carter replied. "But you did not listen." The Varkon commander looked down for a moment. "No, we did not." The room behind Carter was quiet. Human officers watched the conversation carefully. Vrax spoke again. "If we surrender, will you destroy the rest of our fleet?" Carter answered without hesitation. "No." The Varkon commander looked surprised. "You will allow us to leave." Carter nodded once. This war was about defense, not revenge. The bridge behind Vrax became silent. Many Varkon officers could not believe what they were hearing. They had attacked Earth. They had started the war. Yet the humans were offering mercy. Vrax slowly took a deep breath. Then the Varkon Dominion fleet accepts defeat. He paused. We will leave the Sol system immediately. Carter gave a short nod. Your ships will be escorted until you reach the edge of the system. The communication ended. On the human command center floor, several officers finally relaxed. One of them spoke quietly. Admiral, the war is over. Carter looked at the large screen showing Earth. Yes, he said. But the message must reach the galaxy. Hours later, news of the battle spread across the stars. Every major civilization received the same report. The Varkon Dominion fleet had attacked humanity. The result was clear. The fleet had been destroyed in less than 1 hour. Across the galaxy, leaders watched the recordings of the Titan-class weapon. Entire fleets disappearing in seconds. Perfect human battle formations. Defense systems stronger than anything ever seen. The truth shocked many civilizations. Humans had been living quietly for decades, helping others, trading peacefully, avoiding conflict. But behind that peaceful behavior, they had been preparing for the worst day. Back on the Galactic Council world, the Great Chamber was full again. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to discuss the battle. Everyone was talking at the same time. Some were frightened, others were amazed. Finally, the chamber became silent when the elders entered the hall. The same elder who had warned Commander Vrax slowly walked to the center of the room. He looked around at the worried faces of the council members. You have now seen the truth, he said calmly. A representative from a small world raised a hand. Why are humans so powerful? The elder thought for a moment before answering. Because they remember their past. The council members looked confused. The elder continued. Human history is full of war. They learned what war can destroy. So they made a decision. What decision? Someone asked. The elder spoke slowly. They decided that peace must always be stronger than war. He pointed toward the stars outside the giant window. That is why they built those fleets. Not to conquer, but to protect. The chamber remained silent. The elder finished with one final sentence. And now the galaxy understands the warning. Far away, near the edge of the Sol system, the remaining Varkon ships slowly jumped into hyperspace. They were returning home. Defeated, but alive. Commander Vrax stood alone on the quiet bridge of his flagship. He watched the stars disappear as the ship entered faster-than-light travel. He remembered the words of the elder again. Do not provoke humanity. Now he understood why. Because humans were not the most aggressive species in the galaxy. They were not the loudest. They were not the fastest to start wars. But they were something far more dangerous. They were patient. And when patient people are finally forced to fight, they make sure the war ends completely. From that day forward, a new rule spread across the galaxy. It was repeated by diplomats, traders, explorers, and soldiers. A simple warning that everyone remembered. Never provoke humanity. Rocket.